Duggar is accused of molesting a then 9-year-old girl.
Breaking news tonight, harsh reality for reality TV star Josh Duggar, indicted for downloading and possessing child pornography.
It's former reality TV star Joseph Duggar in court, facing charges that threaten to send him to jail for decades.
The Duggar family didn't just fail. They performed the most perfect act of self-destruction in reality television history. For over a decade, they built a massive empire on a single, unwavering premise. They were morally superior to the rest of society. They weren't just a family on your screen, they were a living, breathing judgment on the way the rest of the world lived. They sold an image of absolute purity, suppressing every flaw to maintain a multi-million-dollar brand. But by demanding absolute perfection and enforcing total obedience, they created a high-stakes pressure cooker where the slightest crack would cause the entire foundation to implode. And when the eldest son finally fell from grace, he didn't just stumble. He took the family's entire moral authority, threw it on the ground, and set it completely on fire. If you want to know the dark truth behind these closed gates, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the G channel right now, because what we are about to uncover goes deeper than anyone ever realized. To really understand how a family goes from being America's favorite wholesome spectacle to a dark, cautionary tale, you have to look at the trap they built for themselves. The Duggar philosophy wasn't just about wearing long denim skirts and avoiding modern music. It was deeply rooted in the extreme teachings of a highly controversial organization. They followed a system that taught that giving in to temptation was a weakness to be completely hidden from the outside world, not a human flaw to be managed or treated. In this insulated bubble, reputation was everything. The brand was the ultimate idol. When the eldest son committed his first known transgressions as a teenager against the very people living under his own roof, the parents didn't seek outside professional help. They didn't call in experts or authorities to genuinely fix the broken psychology of their golden child. Instead, they applied their own bizarre closed-door system of repentance, prayer, and absolute erasure. They swept the darkest secrets imaginable under the rug, just to protect the television deals that were starting to roll in. That precise moment, choosing the shiny, profitable brand over the safety of the vulnerable, was the exact second the clock started ticking on their absolute destruction. But that wasn't the whole story. The sheer arrogance it took to parade around on national television while guarding a secret of that magnitude requires a level of calculated deception that the public is only just now beginning to understand. For years, the patriarch of the family presented himself as a folksy, relatable dad who just loved his massive brood. Behind the scenes, however, insider reports suggest he was operating less like a father and more like a ruthless CEO of a highly secretive corporation. Rumours have long swirled that every contract, every dollar, and every public statement was controlled with an iron fist. The children weren't just kids, they were unpaid employees in a multi-million-dollar image machine. They were trained from birth to smile through the pain, to give the right answers to producers, and to never, ever make the family look bad. This conditioning created a terrifying reality where the truth was whatever the patriarch said it was. If a problem arose, it was buried. If someone stepped out of line, they were isolated. And in this environment of total secrecy, the darkest behaviours weren't just ignored, they were allowed to fester in the shadows. And what happened next would shock everyone, completely shattering the illusion of the perfect Christian household. Years after those initial teenage cover-ups, the eldest son was married, a father, and incredibly, the executive director of a massive lobbying firm in Washington, D.C., dedicated entirely to promoting strict family values. He was literally walking the halls of political power, telling the rest of the country how they should live, who they should love, and how they should raise their families. Then came the infamous internet leak of 2015. A massive data breach exposed millions of users on a website designed specifically to help married people step out on their spouses. And sitting right there in the leaked data, paying for premium memberships to facilitate multiple affairs, was the golden boy himself. The hypocrisy was absolutely staggering. He was preaching extreme purity to the masses while secretly purchasing infidelity online. The double bind was finally complete. The carefully curated mask had slipped, and the ugly reality underneath was exposed for the entire world to see. But the real credibility gap in this massive scandal didn't actually belong to the son. It belonged entirely to the parents. When the public connected the dots between the leaked infidelity and the newly unearthed police reports detailing his teenage actions, a collective realization washed over the audience. The world suddenly realized, if the parents were capable of hiding the most disturbing behaviours for years, and if they were willing to cover up blatant affairs just to keep the show on the air, what else were they hiding behind the walls of that massive compound? The trust was fundamentally broken. The audience wasn't just disappointed, they felt entirely manipulated. The family had monetised their supposed moral high ground, cashing enormous checks from a major network while secretly managing a crisis that should have ended their television careers before they even began. The financial fallout was absolutely devastating and immediate. The network had no choice but to pull the plug on their flagship show. Advertisers fled in droves, refusing to have their products associated with a family now tainted by such a toxic, deeply disturbing scandal. The empire lost millions in syndication deals, speaking fees, and massive book contracts overnight. For a family obsessed with financial independence and accumulating wealth, losing that massive television paycheck was the first real, tangible threat to their iron grip on power. They had never faced actual consequences before. Every mistake had always been prayed away or hidden behind a well-timed press release. Now, the gates of their fortress were being battered by the media, legal inquiries, and a deeply angry public. They desperately tried to pivot, launching a spin-off show that supposedly focused only on the older daughters moving forward with their lives. But the stain was already permanent. The name was ruined. And no amount of rebranding could wash away the fact that the entire foundation of their fame was built on a massive, unforgivable lie. There has been a lot of buzz online about how the family managed their internal operations during this massive financial crash. Insider reports claim that behind closed doors, the atmosphere was chaotic, with emergency meetings held late into the night to figure out how to stop the bleeding. Exclusive theories from those close to the family's inner circle suggest that assets were quietly being shifted, properties were being reorganised under different shell companies, and intense pressure was placed on the remaining sons to step up and salvage the family's public image. They needed a new golden child. They needed someone who hadn't been tainted by the scandals of Washington, D.C. or the leaked police reports. They needed a blank slate. And that intense, desperate search for a saviour is exactly what led the heavy, suffocating spotlight to suddenly swing away from the eldest son and land directly onto the quietest member of the entire family. Just when the family thought they had perfectly managed the crisis, shifting the narrative to their daughters and quietly preparing a new, untainted son to take the reins of their crumbling empire, the ultimate catastrophe struck. This wasn't just another leaked internet rumour or a hypocritical political scandal. In the spring of 2021, federal authorities descended on a car lot owned by the family, and the golden child was officially taken into custody. He wasn't just facing public backlash this time, he was facing severe federal charges involving the possession of unthinkable digital contraband. This single, staggering event shattered any remaining microscopic vestige of the model Christian household they had desperately tried to maintain. The mugshot circulated globally, replacing the smiling reality TV promos with the grim reality of a federal holding centre. The family name instantly transformed from a quirky pop culture phenomenon into a dark synonym for criminal cover-ups and absolute morale. Bankruptcy. During the trial, the patriarch of the family was actually forced to take the witness stand, raising his right hand in a federal courtroom where he had to publicly answer for the way he handled those deeply disturbing police reports from over a decade earlier. The brand wasn't just damaged anymore, it was legally, unequivocally dead. But what happened inside that courtroom revealed something even more terrifying about the family's dynamics. Testimony exposed the extreme lengths the family went to in order to monitor their own children, installing tracking software on devices and enforcing strict internet rules. Yet, the eldest son had easily bypassed all of it, operating a secret digital life right under his father's nose. This revelation completely destroyed the illusion of the patriarch's absolute control. The public watched in horror as the very system designed to protect the family was exposed as nothing more than a flimsy theatre of purity. When the guilty verdict was finally read and the eldest son was sent away for over a decade, the massive multi-million-dollar Duggar machine ground to a screeching halt. The spin-off shows were cancelled. The remaining sponsorships completely vanished. The massive compound in Arkansas suddenly looked less like a bustling homestead and much more like a silent, heavily guarded fortress under total siege. And as the dust settled from the federal sentencing, the intense, burning spotlight of public scrutiny had to go somewhere. It aggressively pivoted away from the locked-up older brother and landed squarely on the shoulders of the sibling who had spent his entire life blending into the background. Which brings us directly to Joseph. For years, Joseph was known to fans as the quiet one. While his older brother was bombastic, arrogant, and constantly seeking the political and television limelight, Joseph stood quietly in the back of family photos. He rarely spoke during interviews. He seemed perfectly content to follow the rules, marry a smiling, agreeable wife, and start quietly building his own massive brood away from the flashing cameras. He built a small construction and real estate business. To the casual observer, he seemed to be the completely different, untainted Duggar. He was the safe bet. But there is a massive behavioural flaw baked into the very core of this restrictive system, and it is entirely inescapable. When you grow up inside a highly controlled environment where sin is hidden, absolute obedience is demanded, and authority is never to be questioned, you do not learn true accountability. You learn compliance. You learn how to keep secrets. You learn that protecting the family name is more important than telling the truth. Because of this deeply ingrained conditioning, the public now views every single male in that family through the dark, terrifying lens of the eldest brother's actions. The public fundamentally understands that they were all raised with the exact same toxic playbook, and because of that, the sins of the older brother have effectively become the lifelong sentencing of his siblings. There has been a lot of intense buzz online about how the family is currently using Joseph behind the scenes. Insider reports suggest that immediately following the federal conviction, the patriarch began quietly restructuring the family's massive financial portfolio. Exclusive theories from those tracking the family's real estate records claim that numerous properties, shell companies, and business assets are being systematically funneled into Joseph's name. Why him? The rumours suggest that his fiercely compliant, quiet nature makes him the perfect vessel for the patriarch to maintain total financial control without drawing the heat of the national media. According to these exclusive theories, Joseph isn't just a quiet son living a simple life. He is allegedly the new financial linchpin of the entire Duggar organisation, holding the keys to the kingdom, while his father operates completely from the shadows. If these reports are true, it places Joseph in an incredibly dangerous double bind. He is being pushed to the forefront of a family business that the public actively despises. Recently, the family attempted what public relations experts call a soft launch. They started slowly pushing Joseph and his incredibly cheerful wife, Kendra, back onto social media. They posted perfectly curated photos of wholesome family outings, smiling children, and quiet, idyllic country life. It was a desperate, calculated attempt to prove to the world that the Duggar brand could still produce good, pure, untainted people. They were testing the waters, hoping the audience had a short memory and an appetite for the old, familiar nostalgia. But the audience wasn't buying it for a single second. The attempt to pivot to a new, shiny Duggar completely backfired. When you look at the comment sections under these supposed wholesome posts, they aren't filled with fans gushing over cute babies anymore. The comments are absolutely brutal. Internet sleuths and former fans are flooding the pages with intense skepticism. The overarching sentiment is entirely unified. Same, but different. People are completely rejecting the emotional appeal because they no longer view these people as distinct individuals. They see a deeply flawed, highly protected system. Every smile looks forced. every posed photograph feels like a calculated distraction. Any attempt at presenting a normal, happy life feels like outright gaslighting to an audience that has already seen the monsters hiding in the closet. This intense backlash reveals the ultimate, inescapable tragedy of the family's current reality. Even if Joseph is completely innocent of any wrongdoing, and to be absolutely clear, there is zero legal evidence to suggest he has done anything wrong, he is entirely trapped in a prison built by his own father. The family spent over 20 years aggressively training the American public to view them as a single, unified, indistinguishable unit. They marketed themselves as a collective force of moral perfection. You cannot claim to be a singular, unified brand when the money is rolling in, and then suddenly beg for individual innocence when the entire ship is sinking. The public simply won't allow it. Every silent nod Joseph gives, every real estate deal he signs, and every time he avoids the press, the internet assumes he is just playing his part in the next big cover-up. And the speculation doesn't stop at just financial maneuvers. Insider reports claim that the tension within the massive Arkansas compound is reaching an absolute boiling point. Whispers suggest that some of the siblings are desperately trying to break away, quietly distancing themselves from the toxic family name. But those who stay, like Joseph, are allegedly subjected to intense, closed-door meetings where loyalty is demanded above all else. Exclusive theories suggest that the patriarch is using a combination of financial leverage and religious guilt to keep the remaining loyalists in line, terrified that one more defection, one more leak to the press, could result in the total liquidation of everything they have left. The silence coming from Joseph isn't viewed as the peace of a quiet man anymore. It's viewed as the terrified compliance of a hostage. And the deeper you look into how this family operates in their new, isolated reality, the darker the picture becomes. And as the intense, deeply ingrained suspicion toward the family's youngest patriarch grows, the true isolation of the Duggar empire becomes impossible to ignore. A reality. Check is slamming into the massive compound in Arkansas like a freight train. The once bustling family homestead, a place that used to see enormous camera crews, adoring fans and high-profile political figures, is now entirely cut off. The gates are closed and the empire is actively crumbling. They lost their national television platform. They lost their multi-million-dollar sponsorships. They completely lost their political influence in Washington, D.C. and their eldest son to the federal prison system. Even the patriarch, attempting one last desperate grab for power, completely lost a recent election for a state Senate seat in an absolutely humiliating defeat. The public has entirely rejected them, and the internet speculation about Joseph isn't just idle gossip or cruel trolling. It is a direct reflection of a public demanding accountability. When you spend over 20 years telling the entire world you are the ultimate authority on Christian morality, and then a federal court proves unequivocally that you raised a predator, the public has a massive right to ask, who else was hurt? What else is being hidden? The absolute silence from the family, especially from those positioned as the new leaders like Joseph, only aggressively amplifies the speculation. The irony here is absolutely suffocating. The entire Duggar philosophy, the core moral lesson they shoved down the throats of the American public for over a decade, was that the outside world was evil, dark and sinful, and they alone were the pure, shining light. They intentionally isolated their massive brood of children to keep them safe from the perceived dangers of a secular society. But by isolating them, by completely removing any semblance of accountability to the outside world, by refusing to engage with mandated reporters, therapists, or true law enforcement, they created the very dark. Space where abuse was actively hidden and parental authority was deeply weaponized. They didn't protect their children from the world, they protected the world from their most toxic secrets. Now, even if Joseph is living an entirely innocent, completely mundane life, which, again, there is absolutely no evidence to suggest otherwise, he is entirely trapped by his own family's design. He cannot escape the enormous dark shadow of his older brother, and he cannot escape the suffocating grip of his father's reputation. There has been a lot of intense buzz online about how the family is handling this total collapse internally. Insider reports claim that the massive family is deeply fractured, with factions forming between those who want to completely cut ties with the patriarch and those who believe they must circle the wagons to survive. Exclusive theories from former members of their controversial church suggest that the patriarch is actively rewriting the narrative for the remaining loyalists, convincing them that they are not dealing with the consequences of their own actions, but rather facing intense, demonic persecution from an evil world. According to these rumours, Joseph is allegedly at the very centre of this internal conflict, desperately trying to maintain his quiet life and business while being heavily pressured by his father to become the new public face of their so-called persecution. If these exclusive theories are accurate, Joseph is carrying the weight of an entire collapsed empire on his shoulders, forced to smile for the cameras while the walls of the compound close in around him. The public simply will not allow the family to reboot their image. Every attempt the family makes to re-enter the spotlight is instantly met with a barrage of questions about the past. The audience remembers the police reports. They remember the leaked Ashley Madison accounts. They remember the federal trial, the shocking digital contraband, and the terrifying realization that the patriarch knew so much more than he ever let on. The public no longer sees a quirky, massive family with a lot of rules. They see a highly organized, deeply secretive system designed solely to protect the men at the very top. Any attempt at normalcy, any picture of Joseph smiling with his children, feels entirely sinister. The audience is constantly looking for the hidden reality, analysing every background detail, every facial expression, searching for the cracks in the facade. The attempt to pivot to a new, untainted Duggar has completely failed, because the audience has fundamentally learned how to read between the lines of the family's carefully crafted public relations. This brings the entire Duggar legacy to an absolute, unchangeable point of no return. They can never go back to reality television. No network would ever touch them, and no sponsor would ever risk their brand by associating with the family name. They can never be the loud, proud, moral arbiters of America again. Their political capital is entirely spent, and their public trust is completely bankrupt. The intense, unyielding speculation surrounding Joseph Duggar proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the damage this family caused is deeply generational. The sins of the father and the horrific actions of the eldest son have permanently stained the entire bloodline in the eyes of the public. Whether Joseph is actively participating in covering up new family secrets, or whether he is simply guilty by association, desperately trying to live a quiet life under a ruined name, the ultimate result is exactly the same. The Duggar family brand is toxic, dead, and entirely unsalvageable. They built a massive empire on judging the rest of the world, only to completely destroy themselves from the inside out. The reality is, the fall of the Duggar empire isn't just a story about a reality TV show getting cancelled. It is a massive, incredibly dark, cautionary tale about the dangers of extreme isolation, unchecked authority, and the absolute obsession with image over genuine truth. They sacrificed their own children on the altar of a television brand, and now they are paying the ultimate price. The gates of their massive compound may be permanently closed, but the world is finally seeing everything they desperately tried to hide. But what do you think? Is it actually fair to hold the younger siblings, like Joseph, entirely accountable for the horrific sins of their parents and their older brother? Or is this massive public backlash just the completely natural, unavoidable consequence of building a massive, lucrative brand on judging everyone else? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you want to dive even deeper into the absolute downfall of the massive IBLP empire and the dark secrets of the families involved, click the video on the screen right now. Don't forget to absolutely smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, because we aren't even close to being done exposing the terrifying truth hidden far behind those closed gates.